Welcome to another Highland League Weekly preview show. I'm Ryan Cryle and here's Callum Law with everything you need to know about this weekend's big game.
The main game for us this weekend on Highland League Weekly is the GPH Builders Merchants Highland League Cup semi-final between Brora Rangers and Keith at Dudgeon Park. The tie was unfortunately postponed last Saturday, but it's been rearranged and both sides now know who they'll face in the final if they can get through. It'll be Fraserburgh at Harlaw Park in Inverurie next weekend. That's the incentive. Brora have won the League Cup on 2 occasions, 2016 and 2022, while Keith are the record winners in this competition, lifting the trophy on 10 occasions, but their last triumph was back in 2013. Both sides were also in action in midweek. The Catics made it 5 wins in a row in all competitions with a 2-0 victory against Clach, while Keith slipped to a 3-2 defeat against Nairn County at Station Park. But you'll be able to see who comes out on top and reaches the Highland League Cup final on Monday's Highland League Weekly.
Competition time then. Let's start with the bad news. Last week we asked you to predict the winners of both GPH Builders Merchants Highland League Cup semi-finals between Brechin City and Fraserburgh and Brora Rangers and Keith. However, only one of those took place because Brora Rangers against Keith was rolled over to this weekend. So the competition is declared null and void, unfortunately. The winners are Highland League Weekly, who don't have to give away a mug or a tea towel and therefore save a bit of cash from last week's episode. Let's move on though to this week's teaser question. Brora Rangers and Keith, they will meet this weekend, as I said, and we want you to tell us the last time Brora Rangers and Keith won the Highland League Cup, which teams did they both beat in the finals? Answer correctly and you could win prestigious Highland League Weekly mug, the thing that everyone picks, or you could choose, as less people do, fewer people do, the Crystal Paul tea towel. Send in your answers to sport@pressjournal.co.uk or answer in the comments wherever you're watching this video for your chance to win. Crystal Paul time. Now, last week Callum played the role of Crystal Paul. Crystal Paul himself isn't here, hasn't been here the last 2 weeks. There's nothing wrong with him, he's just on late shift. I was the opposition, and in my role as opposition already leading, of course, quite handsomely, I predicted that Fraserburgh would beat Brechin City in their Highland League Cup semi-final at Glebe Park, which earned me 1 point, which means the score is now 20 points to 5 to the opposition. So we've decided to swap roles this week, and I'll be Crystal Paul and try and get a point for Crystal Paul because he needs them, and Callum will be the opposition. The rules, as you'll see them on the screen at the moment, remain the same. Callum, Brora Rangers against Keith in last week's postponed semi-final.
I'm going to just stick with what I said last week, to be very boring, but I think Brora playing at home, regardless of who they're playing, it's quite hard to go against them. I think Keith will play well and give a good account of themselves, and it's a big game for Keith. But I think over the piece it'll finish up 3-1 to Brora.
I think last week I said Keith on penalties, so I'll say Keith on penalties. Is that acceptable? Do I need to give a score?
I think you need to give a score.
Need to give a score. I'm going to say, that obviously adds a extra level of difficulty, but I'm going to say 1-1 Keith to win on penalties.
Right, and Buckie versus Brechin in the league.
Buckie against Brechin in the league. The last time the sides obviously met at Victoria Park, it was a thrilling clash with everything on the line. Buckie potentially probably weren't at their best that day. We're probably disappointed with how they performed. Is this the first time the sides have met since? I'm going to say Buckie to edge it this weekend. 2-1.
Interesting. Last season, the 2 games, it was a 1-0 and a 2-0 to Brechin, but I wouldn't have said there was a plethora of chances and certainly not goals in either game, so I'd be inclined to look along similar lines again, and I would say 1-1.
All right, well, find out how we got on this weekend or by tuning in next week to the Highland League Weekly preview.
The second game for us this weekend on Highland League Weekly is Buckie Thistle versus Brechin City at Victoria Park, and here's 3 things you need to know. Both sides come into this fixture in decent form after winning on Wednesday night. Buckie won 3-1 up at Rothes, while Brechin were victors by 2-1 at home against Inverurie Locos. It's a clash of first versus third in the Brechin Highland League. Both sides have made excellent starts to their league campaigns. Buckie top of the table on goal difference with 22 points from 9 fixtures. Brechin third in the division with 22 points from 8 games. It's the first meeting between the Jags and the Hedgemen since the final day of last season when they clashed at Victoria Park in a title decider, and goals in the closing stages from Ewan Loudon and Grady McGrath won the league for Brechin. The Lily-Whites, under the interim stewardship of Blair Laurie and Martin Callum, are still searching for their first victory in the league this season. Meanwhile, Banks of Dee are hoping to get back to winning ways following a loss against Brechin and a draw with Devon Vale in midweek.
Now, Vale are unbeaten in their last 2 games in all competitions. Scottish Cup victory 2 weekends ago, and then a 3-3 draw in the league with Banks of Dee in midweek. That game will have come with a tinge of frustration for Vale. They were 3-1 up against title hopefuls Dee in the second half at Princess Royal Park. Nairn County, meanwhile, they got back on track with a victory against Keith in midweek following a disappointing defeat to Buckie Thistle on Saturday.
United got back to winning ways against Fraserburgh on Wednesday night, and they are second in the table, one of the 3 sides on 22 points. Meanwhile, the Cans are searching for their first win in the league since the 19th of August. They were beaten 3-2 by Wick Academy in midweek.
2 teams still looking for their first victories of the Brechin Highland League campaign. Locos have got just 1 point from 8 outings so far, while Strathspey have got no return from their 6 games. Locos, though, they acquitted themselves well in midweek in losing 2-1 to champions Brechin City at Glebe Park. Strathspey, meanwhile, this will be their first outing since an 8-2 Scottish Cup defeat to Gallifreydine Rovers 2 weekends ago.
The Coasters are still searching for their first win this season, despite a couple of promising draws in the league. They're up against a Scorries outfit who ended their 5-game losing streak on Wednesday night. They defeated Forest 3-2 with Gordon McNabb netting an impressive 5-minute hat-trick.
It's 9th against 5th, this one. Rothes lost to Buckie Thistle in midweek and will have to be back to their organised best under Ross Jack to blunt Turriff United's dangerous attack. That attack saw Turriff beat Formartine United on their last outing last weekend.
The Black and Golds weren't in action on Wednesday night, so they should be well prepared for this one, and they'll be hoping to continue as they left off against Clachnacudden last Saturday when they won 8-0. The Broch, they are aiming to bounce back after their loss to Formartine, but they'll have to do so without influential midfielder Paul Young, who was sent off in the closing stages of that game.
That's it for another Highland League Weekly preview show. Thanks to our Highland League Weekly sponsor this season, Alexander Wallace Toyota in Elgin. Whether you're looking for a new or used Toyota, or you've already got one, they're there to help you, and you can find details on Alexander Wallace Toyota below this video. Just a reminder, the games we're filming for Monday's Highland League Weekly this weekend: Brora Rangers against Keith in the GPH Builders Merchants Highland League Cup semi-final. Find out who gets through to next weekend's showpiece. And we're also filming the Brechin Highland League match between Buckie Thistle and Brechin City. Before we see you next on Monday, please follow Highland League Weekly or join our various social groups. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. You can find us in all those places. You can also sign up to receive more Highland League news from the Press and Journal with our newsletters. There's a link to do that below this video as well. Till we see you next, please enjoy the football, whichever games you're watching.